Welcome to your Tuesday edition of the Athletic Hockey Show. It's Ian Mendes, it's Julian McKenzie, and yeah, we have a video component to this. We are streaming live on YouTube. And if you're streaming live on YouTube or watching this, you'll realize the two of us, it's a twinning Tuesday. Twinning Tuesdays. We wear the same thing without even realizing it.
Yeah. Oh man. We got on the recording and I just yelled out like, yo, I see you're wearing the same sweater as I am. I can't believe this.
It's athletic gear though. For the people listening just to the audio, we're both wearing athletic hoodies.
The black athletic hoodie with the white strings. Like I went to go full athletic and wear the athletic hat, and like all Ian is missing is that hat. But like I don't see you as a hat guy. You're not a hat guy to me.
I got hats. I got the Dallas Cowboys hat. I always kind of feel like, and we have some other athletic gear that has just like a big letter A on it. And I always fear that we're going to get sued by like Alvin and the Chipmunks. Because it looks like the A from Alvin. The A, it looks like your hat looks like Alvin. It's like an A from Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Really?
Yeah. I think they all just have large letters on their shirts. I think it was like A,
like giant
S.
They're like yellow A's.
I don't know. It feels a little like we're copyright infringement on Alvin and the Chipmunks here.
Did you watch a different version of that show that I did? Because I remember these chipmunks with these giant yellow A's on their shirts.
That's what I'm saying, but large letter A.
What should NHL teams get mad at the Athletic because we have A's on the front of our uniform, or not uniforms? Maybe I shouldn't say uniforms. For our apparel.
Oakland's baseball team. Maybe they're going to sue us.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you see the video? Not to go into another sport. There's a video for one of the players on the A's. I believe their name is Trevor May. They went on this stream and eviscerated the owner. Yeah. Oh my God.
That was his retirement speech. He's like, by the way, sell the team. Like, what? That's crazy. We would never get.
Could you imagine an NHL player doing that? Could you imagine like an NHL player? And I know he's already gone. I'll do it. Why not? Could you imagine an NHL player who spent all those years in Ottawa retiring and saying like to the previous owner, like, oh no, like just saying all these disparaging things about them, which obviously not a nice thing to necessarily do. Well, yeah.
Anyway, look. Look, we're right into my plan was to kind of slowly ease into the Tuesday pod today.
No.
Kind of like we were Evgeny Kuznetsov on a shootout. That was my plan. Oh. Just slowly come into the pod. We came in right off the hop. Let's talk about this. So the people who didn't watch or see the highlights of Washington, Calgary, the game went to a shootout. And this has kind of become Evgeny Kuznetsov's thing. He'll come in for a shootout and he'll go like it's almost like he's not even moving. Like he is moving, but he's barely moving. It's the slowest possible pace. He's going maybe 2-3 miles an hour. Slow, stick handle. He scored. And I've seen a lot of conversations about they shouldn't allow this. Is this legal? Is it not legal? Where do you come down on Evgeny Kuznetsov's shootout maneuver?
He's going forward. I guess he's taking his time, but it's legal. I don't have a problem with it. I think we all know how the shootout is a gimmick. I've soured on it in recent years. I used to be a fan of it. I now would much rather 3-on-3 OT. At this point, if we're going to get angry about shootout stuff, let's just get rid of it altogether. That being said, if we're going to keep it around, the players, I think the skaters need to be as creative as possible when it comes to trying to beat goalies. And I don't have a problem with Evgeny Kuznetsov taking his sweet time, just so long as it's not overdoing it, I guess. I was thinking about it this morning. I wonder if it would work to have a shot clock for a shootout. Like, say you give a player, 15 seconds for them to get their shot off? Yeah, like enough time to do it. Maybe that's a worthwhile alternative where, okay, you could try it, but you have to get the shot off before then. Maybe that's it. Maybe you give Kuznetsov could find a way to do that move, but he can't take more than 10 seconds. But even then, maybe that's not worth doing. Maybe, again, we should just get rid of the shootout together. I don't have a problem with it, but I think doing a time limit could be a compromise.
Okay. If you're going to allow a time limit, and I'm not saying that's not a bad idea. I think that's a good idea. But then I think if you allow the time limit, then I think you should be allowed to skate backwards, go around the net, do whatever you want in your 15 seconds. It's your 15 seconds.
I don't agree with that. I think you need here's the thing. I think you need to. It can't let it get to a point where you're doing all of these random. I mean, I don't know. I think going forward, that's the purpose of the rule. It's. I don't think you want to invite any other extra stuff by looping around or going backwards. As long as you have some kind of forward progress, like you need a shot at the end of the day, right? Like it can't just be like I don't know. You can't have Trevor. I mean, could you imagine? The one thing I keep thinking of is remember that goal from Trevor Zegras. I want to say in January 2022, not the dish,
not the Milano goal.
Not the Milano goal, but the one where he goes at full speed, goes around the net, and does the lacrosse style stuff.
Was that against the Habs?
That was against the Montreal Canadiens. I was in the building for that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that should be allowed in a shootout. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily fair. And plus, if you're going to add a time limit, I mean, you can only have so much time to mess around. I don't know if that should be allowed.
But think of the pressure. Could Trevor Zegras pull that off? You know you only have whatever 50 and go, and you only have one shot because if you go to flub it, it's over. You got to pick it off clean. No one would try that.
Yeah, but like it's tough for goalies too, and you have to give them some measure of there has to be some measure of fairness in this. I don't think you could have that happen. No behind the net stuff, no going backwards, especially if you have a time limit. There's no sense going backward to begin with. So just go straight to the net. I don't know. I just think the fact that we're nitpicking over rules, just get to 3-on-3 OT, and I don't want ties either. Make it continuous, or just keep doing 5-minute periods until we get a winner. Like I don't know. I think we're at a point now where the shootout has really lost its luster. It's not as fun as it used to be. It's essentially like a momentum killer, considering how much fun OTs could actually be.
Do you remember was it Edmonton? Linus Omark? Linus Omark?
No,
Linus Omark.
Is that how he's well, you're saying Linus Omark like the Boston Bruins goalie.
No, Omark.
Oh man.
Wasn't that the guy? He took the shootout and he did like a pirouette before he went into the zone, and people lost their minds. They're like, the sanctity of the shootout. Like, what sanctity?
I think it was cool when it happened, but I think a much more egregious offense. So you could tell me, because this was an Ottawa Senator who did this. Like, I think it was Kasper Dogevins.
Kasper's Dogevins.
He turned around his who had his the toe of his skate blade lead the puck, and he tried a spin move on net, and it almost went
on
in.
His stick. Yeah, it was unbelievable. You know what's funny is I did a walk-off interview that night.
Yeah.
I was doing the broadcast, and that night David Krejci came out. The Bruins ended up winning that game. David Krejci did a walk-off interview with me, and he basically said that was disrespectful to the game.
Yeah.
That Dogevins did that. The funny part is about 2 weeks later, Dogevins got put on waivers and Boston claimed him. Like,
what do you tell a guy like that after you claim him?
Yeah. Like 2 weeks earlier, here's Dave Krejci. Like, that guy is classless. And I was like, here, meet your new teammate.
Kasper Dogevins.
Kasper's Dogevins.
Oh, man.
Monday night.
Yes.
We had a couple of coaches doing a couple of controversial things early. Which one to you is a little bit more like, whoa, that's you're coming out pretty strong here, coach? There's Lindy Ruff, who basically stapled a handful of players, including Timo Meir, to the bench in the third period in a loss to Florida. Then there's Sheldon Keefe, gets up to the podium in Toronto and basically says, well, my best players all gave the puck away in the first period. Which is the thing that you're like, wow, that's a gutsy move as a coach. Week 1 of the regular season, you're going to do this. who was more, or I guess who's more taking a risk there, Keefe or Ruff?
I would assume it's Lindy Ruff here. I feel like Sheldon Keefe has tried to call out his players before. He didn't actually bench them in that case. Like I think if it gets to that point, that's going to end up being a massive story, knowing the market that they're in. But for Lindy Ruff to get to a point where you're benching Timo Meir, this is a New Jersey Devils team that's supposed to be really good. We're putting a lot of hype on them, not to the point of like an Edmonton Oilers, but to go to that point. I mean, it's typical of what coaches can do. They can wield that power, but I'm a little bit more shocked by that as opposed to Sheldon Keefe once again saying his players weren't doing well enough. Like I feel like that's happened enough with the Toronto Maple Leafs, where I mean, you'd think for the players they get that message, but that doesn't reverberate for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think when you actually hold the players accountable by benching them, but it's funny, right? Because I think sometimes as fans and as media, when star players have bad games, we're like, you should bench them and hold them to the same degree of accountability. And then when they do it, we're like, oh my God, he benched Timo Meir. I can't believe he did that. Right?
How was he? No wonder they lost the game. You benched this guy for 5 minutes.
Exactly. And if they lost 3-2 with Meir playing, you should have benched Meir and sent a message. It's like, you can't win as a coach.
I don't know, man. I mean, I'm sure it's happened over the course of history, but like until we get like a very recent case of a guy getting benched by his coach, and then we get like tangible discord that we can dissect and talk about on these shows, it's very hard for me to get up in arms about a player getting benched. Like if we hear like, oh, there's rumors of strife between Sheldon Keefe and Austin Matthews after he was benched after this one game, then I could get excited about it. But in this case, it's like, all right, that happened. The players could go to practice, they move on and go from there. If memory serves, and I hope I don't get this wrong, was it the Devils? There was a team that had a massive bag skate this morning. It might have actually been the Devils after the performance that they had. I'll double check it was. The Devils after losing 2 straight. There's a video put up by Anna Dua, I think works with the NHL Network. They're doing a bag skate at the Devils practice facility. So yeah, if anything, that's more controversial than any of the other options presented, because how many coaches, because you done messed up when you're doing a bag skate the next day.
Remember when the Devils, they were perfect in the preseason and we thought, boy, they're going to come out of the gates and they're going to be firing on all cylinders, and here they go. A little bit of turmoil early in New Jersey. For a lot of people, sneaky Stanley Cup pick. That's where a lot of people thought of the Devils. Edmonton, well, not so sneaky Stanley Cup pick. Dave stumbled a little bit. And again, we had Daniel Nugent-Bowman with us yesterday to talk about that. I do know that our pal, we had Daniel Nugent-Bowman yesterday. We do have our pal, Mike Russo, set to join us here on the Tuesday show. And you know, Mike Russo, I know you and I really enjoyed this column. In fact, when we bring him in here, why don't we just start by, first of all, by saying hello. There he is, Mike Russo. Did Mike Russo get the memo to wear the hoodie?
I should have brought the hoodie with me. I'm on a road trip. I should have brought. This is not an athletic hoodie. This is just a pullover. I was just listening to your Lindy Ruff stuff. So I covered Lindy down in Florida in the 90s. This does not shock me. He's an old school coach. The bag skate is frowned upon in this new era of NHL coaches, but it does not shock me that Lindy would go to that route. And you know, and hey, it's never too early to send a message when you're supposed to be an elite team ready to make a step this year. And you know, it's funny. I was in Montreal last year, and I sat down with Bill Guerin after 4 games and did a state of the team story like the sky was falling. Sometimes you get so entrenched early in the season that you think everything is just absolutely terrible, and you have to send a message, and the Wild quickly turned it around after that.
Yeah, sometimes we panic, right? That's what we do in big hockey markets. We panic after week 1. Julian and I both really enjoyed the combo piece you did with Joe Smith. And it kind of goes back to that September meeting of all the coaches in Chicago. And they kind of got called a little bit under the carpet in terms of the way that they're or have been speaking to officials on the ice. And they showed a bunch of clips of F-bombs and some great quotes in there from the DeBoers and some great stuff in there. We would encourage our listeners to check it out. What was your biggest takeaway from writing the Shut the Bleep Up column today.
Yeah, that the coaches actually enjoyed it. Like Pete DeBoer loved when I was talking to him, just giving it to Paul Maurice for being the star of the show. And Paul Maurice retorted the other day that Pete's full of shit, that he was not the star of the show, that Rick Bowness and a couple others were as well. But look, I mean, I think that the league tried to do it in a very lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek type of way. But there was no doubt that the message was sent to the coaches that this is not the image that you want and not the image that the league wants. Now, I know that the commenters on the story are saying, well, how about this? Just deal with your officiating problem right now. But I think the other part of it is, and there was actually one comment that I thought was perfect on there, is they said, you know how like little kids emulate players that they want to be when they grow up and be in the NHL? You know, when even youth coaches and other coaches see coaches going absolutely bonkers on officiating, this is a big problem on why maybe there are that officials at youth levels and lower levels of hockey are really abused during games from parents. It's like everybody feels licensed that you can just go right after them. So again, there's multiple ways that you can look at this story. But, the one thing I want to make very clear is that this was not 100% like the real reason that the coaches were summoned to Chicago for this meeting, but it was just sort of a lighthearted way to end the meeting and just sort of tell everybody, look, let's calm things down. And I think actually in the first week of the season, and I talked to a couple referees this week, that it feels like coaches have gotten that message. Now, how long will that last in the heat of battle with guys like Paul Maurice and Rod Brindamore? I mean, we saw John Cooper lost it last night. So, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on these coaches, and sometimes when you're heat of it and you feel like your team was egreged against by an official, you're just going to let them know.
What about if the league institutes harsher fines or harsher penalties for coaches who get on at refs?
I think that is something. I mean, we've seen Rod Brindamore and some others get fined. I don't think that they want to throw any repercussions here. I think it was more of just a really, healthy message to just say, hey, let's show you a video of what you look like. And do you want even your kids to see you like that? I mean, John Cooper was talking to my colleague Joe Smith last year about the fact that, his video coach basically had him, filmed him during a game and just had him watch himself. And sometimes you just don't realize what you look like during games. And we all know in today's TV world that anytime anything happens, goal, disallowed goal, a close play, a turnover, they immediately pan to the bench and show the coach. And I think that was really the message that the league tried to do. So I don't think they wanted to do it in a threatening way where they think that this is some sort of epidemic problem. But I think that they, by threatening them with all sorts of fines and suspensions and things like that, I think it was more just, try a healthy way to just say, hey, look, let's tone it down. This isn't good for anybody.
I watched this video this week. It was a really old game. I think it was between the Jets and Chicago as well. There's this random play that happens in overtime. There's like a little scrum in the middle of the net, and someone seems like they throw the puck in the net, and it never crosses the line. And there's a review, and when it's gets ruled in favor of Winnipeg, Daryl Sutter comes from the bench and walks along the ice to the refs, and there's a whole bunch of players in that scrum too, but he's walking onto the ice to try to give the referees a piece of his mind. I'll say this, not trying to I'm not trying to pick a side in all of this, but I'll say we have come a very long way from coaches leaving the bench to talk to referees in situations like that.
Yeah, wasn't it Tom Webster? There was somebody with the Kings.
I forget his name.
Ago. Yeah, well, I'm talking in the. I remember the Kings coach throwing. This is before my time, but throwing
with a stick.
Stick, yeah, at a referee.
Tom Webster, absolutely.
Yeah, it was Tom Webster. And actually, I probably should have thrown that in the story, but yeah, I mean, there are. We definitely don't see that anymore. And look, I covered Brian Murray in Florida, both as a coach and a GM. Ian, I know you know Brian really well, fiery guy. Yeah. And he, one of the big reasons why GMs can't go to the refs room anymore, or by former GMs like Brian Murray. I mean, this is not like a new problem. The difference now is the cameras are always on you. And I think that's what they're trying to get, is try to stop these viral moments from going all over the map.
I think, was it Rob Fatorik who threw a bench? Do you remember this?
I remember that.
Yeah. When it was Jersey or LA? It was
New Jersey.
I think it was New Jersey.
Yeah,
he took the bench and he threw it out.
This wooden bench getting thrown onto the ice.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Wally Backman in the minors when he absolutely went crazy and threw. What was he doing? He was like absolutely just throwing the dirt onto home plate and putting every sort of piece of equipment out there and throwing it on the field. I mean, look, managers, coaches against officials have been for the combative for the history of time. But I do think a lot of this is also on the refs too. I mean, back in the day, you could get into it with a referee and you'd patch things up. And I think that a lot of times they feel that the referees aren't very communicative, also have a quick trigger in terms of yelling, and also hold grudges. I mean, they're human beings, and it seems sometimes to filter into game to game to game. So I think that both sides here could probably have a healthy relationship and make the relationship better.
Again, we want to encourage our listeners to check out the piece that Mike and Joe Smith did. Just a great look at the dynamic between coaches and officials. One other thing we wanted to talk to you about, there's a few things before we get to your great conversation you had with Bill Zito. Here we are, week 1 of the NHL, and look, the team that I cover, the Ottawa Senators, has had to do this. Vancouver's done it. LA, a couple of teams have had to play a skater short to start the season because of the salary cap crunch. How much of a factor and how much of a talking point are you seeing around the league about this here?
Yeah, this is a big topic. I mean, Daniel Nugent Hopkins, Scotty Bowman did a big story today on this exact subject. And I mean, what Daniel, I mean, I was, you got to figure out, you got to throw the Nugent Hopkins in there since he covers the Oilers. But anyway, I mean, look, it's a huge subject right now, and the Wild are going to skate a man short tonight. I mean, they cannot afford a call up right now because they have 3 injuries. And then basically the way it works, and it's frankly, it's amazing. It's not more punitive. But if you play a man short at your position, you have to do it just for 1 game, and then you can call up a player that's a league minimum player plus $100,000. So that actually gives a lot of teams the ability then in an emergency situation to at least field a roster and not put the players in dire straits. But and the Wild, I will say, are going to try to figure out, is it smarter to pull that lever or maybe put Alex Goligoski on LTIR because it's looking like he has a serious injury sustained in practice yesterday. But look, this is an overall overarching problem that was very, very evident was going to happen this offseason. I mean, first of all, we've had essentially a flat cap for 4 years, and yet prices continue to rise. And it's not the high guys getting screwed. It's the lower level guys that are getting squeezed out of the league. I mean, we've seen guys like Jujhar Khaira is a great example. And this guy's been in the league now for 6-7 years in a row, has never sniffed the minors, and is now playing in Iowa right now. All because of this very reason. The Wild couldn't afford him out of camp because they were hoping to accrue cap space before they got banged up. And I just think that I know that after the pandemic, the CBA was written in a way that essentially if the players still owed the owners $1, that the cap didn't have to go up. But it just seems foolish from both the league's perspective and the PA that they didn't come to the bargaining table this summer. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that goes into this and give and takes and all that type of stuff. But, even $500,000, $1 million to artificially move the cap up would have put a lot of teams in better positions. And I think that even the union has to look at themselves and say, hey, you know what? There's like 25, 30 jobs that have essentially been cost right now with guys not in this league because teams are fielding 20-man, 21-man, in the case of the Wild tonight, a 19-man roster. And it's a huge, huge problem. Now, is this a temporary problem? Potentially, because the cap is supposed to go up $4 million after this year. There is a major regional TV issue here in the States, and I really wonder if that is going to affect the bottom line. We'll have to see at the end of the year when the audits are done. But to me, this was all avoidable on both sides here. And I know it's very fashionable to blame the league on everything, but look, the PA and the NHL really together should have come to the table this offseason and tried to figure this out. And Bettman decided to just hold stern on this on the way that the agreement was ratified. And now we're seeing what happens here is where you're putting teams in positions where they've got to play. Tonight, the Wild's lineup, they're playing with 11 forwards and 6 defensemen, but 3 of their defensemen are essentially guys that, probably are on the periphery of even being in the minors. So it's going to be an interesting game here in Montreal tonight.
You mentioned the salary cap going up. We've heard that from many an insider. I'm sure there's not a single hockey podcast you could listen to in the hockey world that hasn't acknowledged that the salary cap is supposed to go up by a certain amount in next year and the coming years. Honestly, since you're as connected as you are, how confident are you in that actually happening? You mentioned the TV regional rights potentially hindering some of that.
Yeah, the only reason why I'm still confident is that at the Board of Governors meeting the other day in New York, all the insiders that were there, LeBron, Elliott, Chris Johnston, obviously Dreger, all those guys, they all said that Bettman basically came out and again said that their belief is that the cap will go up that amount. And so clearly this is not a new thing to them to know that there are going to be a lot of teams here that are either going to have to, potentially at some point this season broadcast their own games or aren't going to get paid from Diamond Sports, who owns all the regionals here, all the Valley regionals here. So if they're already putting that into consideration, they must think that they're still going to be able to get to that, whatever that bottom line number is to up the camp by that amount. But in terms of this year, it's obviously not helping Julian. And I just think that it's a real shame. I mean, that we're in this point. But again, we do make a big deal out of this, but the reality is that you're essentially playing one game short, and then that's the only punitive damage that you have. And then you could, tomorrow, if the Wild decide to go that way, they're going to be able to call up Kara, as I mentioned, or Sammy Walker or Vinny Lettieri. And we've seen that happen with the 4 teams that started opening night a man short. And so there's always that way to get by with emergency recalls. But it just seems like a shame because the reality is, from a union perspective, there's too many teams right now that are at the bare minimum rosters as it is. And that's, the reality is that's costing jobs. I mean, there's guys now in the minors or in Europe that should probably be in the National Hockey League.
The Wild playing one skater short in Montreal is one of the storylines heading into that game at the Bell Center. The other, or one of them, Marc-Andre Fleury. This might be the last time we see Flower on the ice in Montreal. He's got obviously just a great connection to that city and that province. And I know you've documented that in the past and did it again this week with The Athletic. And I'm wondering, is this it? If you had to lay bets here, this is the last time we see Marc-Andre Fleury at the Bell Center?
All I can tell you is that Alan Walsh and I corresponded yesterday, and he is fully convinced that this is not necessarily the end of Flower and that he is the type of guy that loves the sport and will want to continue to play on. And then it's a matter of, is there a team out there that at that point is going to give a 39-year-old goalie a job? And obviously it depends on how Marc-Andre plays this year. It's probably his last game in Montreal as a Wild player because I would think that they're going to have Gustafsson next year with Jesper Wallstedt here, and Flower will move on. But I could tell you that Marc-Andre doesn't seem to know. Like, he genuinely says that he will make that decision at the end of the season. And because of that, his family is coming out to tonight's game in droves. I talked to his sister for this story as well, and she said in their eyes it could very well be his last game in Montreal. So clearly he has not made a decision and hasn't divulged that to his family, because his mom, his sister, his aunts, his uncles, his cousins are all coming tonight's game just in case this is the last time that he suits up in Bell Center.
I just want to say one of my favorite hockey moments of all time was being at the Bell Center for when Marc-Andre Fleury was a member of Chicago Blackhawks.
Yep.
And he's closing in on winning game number 500, and the clock is winding down, and everyone in the building is getting up and cheering this guy. One thing about Quebec hockey fans, they love to cheer on les gars de chez nous, and Marc-Andre Fleury is definitely one of those guys. And to see everyone in the building cheer him and celebrate him, and even seeing Canadians players stay on the ice and tap their sticks for him, that is a moment that's always going to stand out for me, just in terms of hockey moments I've been able to see live. And if this very much is the end for Marc-Andre Fleury, I don't be surprised if we see fans acknowledge that in some way at the Bell Center.
Yeah, that was the lead to my story tonight, that exact anecdote, Julian. And I'll tell you, I think one, it speaks to respect level of Marc-Andre Fleury. I mean, there's not a person in this league that doesn't love him and his flair for the dramatic, his absolute, childlike love of the sport that he shows every single night. But then it says everything about the fans here in Montreal, just recognizing the moment, the significance of 500 games, even though he's in a visitor uniform, 500 victories. And, this is the start tonight. He's going to play behind a very disheveled, makeshift lineup. But this is the start tonight of what they are hoping will be eventually 8 victories this season that allows him to pass Patrick Waugh second all time in regular season victories. And I know that that's a big thing in his mind because he, Patrick and Marty Brodeur were two of his biggest idols growing up. And that'll be a pretty fun day in the National Hockey League. I think there are some people that look at it and say, yeah, but he had a bunch of shootout wins, and there's no doubt he's the all-time leader in shootout wins in NHL history, something that Patrick Waugh really never had the benefit of. But still, I mean, quite an accomplishment to celebrate a heck of a career.
Mike, before we let you go, and we're going to get an opportunity to listen to your conversation with Florida Panthers general manager Bill Zito here, I want you to set this conversation up a little bit for our listeners. Talk to us about where you track down Bill Zito, and going into this is an interesting year, isn't it, for the Florida Panthers? That they came off of an improbable run to the Stanley Cup final. They still have the core of the great team there, but a lot of people don't know exactly where to put the Panthers. So maybe before we get to this interview, set us up a little bit here for your conversation with Bill Zito.
Yeah, I've known Bill a long, long time because he was an agent before he was assistant GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets and eventually general manager of the Florida Panthers. Back when I covered the Panthers back in the day, I talked to Bill a lot as an agent, and same thing when the Wild years ago signed John Madden. On the day that Mike Modano decided to sign that one-year deal with Detroit, Minnesota pivoted and signed John Madden. The first person I called was Bill Zito. And so I've known Bill a while. I've been trying to get him to sit down for a pod for a long, long time. He likes to let the players and Paul Maurice be the spokesman, but hey, he had no choice. He was in Minnesota the other day for opening night against the Wild. And so he graciously sat down with me. And the big part of this conversation is one, looking back at last season. I mean, this is a team that at one point last season, not at one point, at many points last season, it looked like they weren't going to make the playoffs. And then they go on this magical run, beat the Bruins, and then go from there, sweep the Carolina Hurricanes in the Eastern Final, and then go and play in the Stanley Cup Final against Vegas, and just were ravaged by injuries throughout that postseason. Obviously, they're still feeling the effects of it. They lost Matthew Tkachuk in that series, but then they lost Brandon Montour, Reinhart, Bennett, Ekblad. They were all playing unbelievably hurt. And we're seeing, Ekblad and Montour out of their lineup now. So what it also talks about is how at some points fickle this league is, that you could go to the Stanley Cup final last year, but you are not a guarantee to make the playoffs this year. And one, and especially that division, but two, with the injuries that they already have to start the year. So it brings you through that. It talks about his years as an agent, talks about a lot of really neat things. It was just what I like about sitting down with GMs, coaches. I'm going to try to sit down with Todd McClellan in the next couple of days for your show next week. They sort of let their guard down in a room with a microphone and have a conversation. And so that's what this is, a real good conversation with the Panthers GM.
So as we let you go here, have we just hired you as our correspondent here? I know you're going to make regular appearances on the Athletic Hockey Show podcast, but we're also getting interviews every week. We're just throwing that out. You're going to just go out and grab interviews for us too?
I don't know about every week, but I did ask when we were canceled. The Athletic Show roundtable on Wednesdays, when we were Merce just absolutely axed by the Athletic. I said, well, hey, can I at least do these sit down still? Because I actually enjoy it. I mean, part of my, what I love about this job, I've done it now for 29 years, is the relationships that you make with people in the game. And my favorite thing in the world is to sit down with a player, a coach, a GM for 15, 20 minutes and shoot the breeze. And so that's what I try to make these things. So I can't say it's going to be every week, but I am going to try my best every week to get you, a 15-minute, 20-minute sit down with somebody that I'm crossing paths with. Because that's the good part with my day job as the Wild beat writer, is that I get to see so many people. So we're going to try to do that.
That's going to be exciting regardless, Ryan.
Yeah.
That's going to be fun. No, you're really good at what you do, man. So I'm looking forward. Even if we just have you on just to shoot the breeze, it's always a good time hanging out.
I'm definitely available for you every week for a chat, but I'm going to try to get you some interviews as well.
We love it. Well, listen, thanks for dropping by here on Tuesday. And why don't we plan to set up, hopefully you let us know when you get Todd McClellan, and we'll tee that up next week.
Yeah, we'll try.
There we go. There goes Mike Russo, one of the best writers in the sport, one of the most plugged in guys, and he set the table for us, didn't he, here with this Bill Zito. So let's have a listen. It's about a 20-minute conversation, right? We're going to hear Mike Russo in conversation with Florida Panthers general manager Bill Zito.
happy to be joined by Florida Panthers GM Bill Zito, and I think everybody that knows me knows my soft spot for the Florida Panthers organization. It's how I got my start for this in this incredible vocation I've had for the last 29 years. I started in 1995 covering the Florida Panthers. A really good year to start covering the Florida Panthers because they went to the Stanley Cup final, and last year getting to cover the Eastern Conference final, Bill, and seeing you guys grab that Prince of Wales trophy, then go on to the Stanley Cup final, come up a little short, but it was still, man, it was just such an incredible experience for me. I can't imagine what it was like for you.
Yeah, it was very strange. You think in your life that you're going to have certain situations. If you ever get there, it'll be like this. And what a little bit unique for me was, as an agent, I had a number of players go through the Stanley Cup finals, win, some didn't win. And players that I was pretty close to at the time. So sort of living through their experience, I had some maybe preconceived notions of what it would be like. And it was, of course, nothing like that, right? Yeah. So, but here we are, and we battle on and try to be better.
I mean, I think one of the coolest parts of me watching the finals was seeing the reaction in the GM suites on a lot of those last second wins, and seeing Matthew Tkachuk's goal, and just seeing your reaction with Roberto Luongo and all that stuff, who I covered as a goalie there. Like, how is it? Like, you pretty much after the trade deadline, I know as a GM, it sort of like really slows down, but the stress level there as you're watching these games, but also preparing for the draft and things like that, how did you negotiate all this type of stuff for between going to the games, but working during the day?
Yeah, there was certainly a level of concern, you know, given where we were in the table, and thinking, I think realistically, it wasn't unrealistic. In fact, Paul and I had talked around the holiday time. If we can just carve out 2 points a month, we should be okay. You know, as we got into the playoffs, of course, the Boston series was surreal, right? I mean, you know, don't get you. We didn't go in and blow Boston out of the water, right? There's some.
You eliminated the best team ever in the NHL.
But and as it went on, I think the manager part of you puts you into the mode of, what can I do to help without getting in the way? And that was every day you'd wake up. Is there something I can do to help the situation, make it better, but don't try to fix something that isn't broken and what have you. So that was something that sort of went on a daily basis. And emotionally, you know, hey, we're people. We got excited. And I think even if you were not a Panther fan, or you were just a hockey fan watching those games, there's a degree of excitement when overtime goals are scored.
Absolutely.
In certain situations, the multiple overtime game in Carolina was interesting because I had been part of the one
in
Columbus,
you know,
with Tampa. And so it was a little easier, I think, for me to kind of maintain a little bit of, okay, here's where we are. Here's what's going on. I know it didn't show, but hey, if you can't have fun, you know, get out of the business.
Yep. What was it like in the final when, you know, you have this great aspiration to win this cup, but deep down, you know how hurt you guys are. I mean, I'm not even talking about the Tkachuk injury yet because that happened later in the series, but you know what Montour was battling through, Ekblad was batting through. I mean, you know, was there this level of concern? Like, are we going to be able to, you know, ice a team and fulfill this dream of ours with the guys that were going through such a battle?
Honestly, and maybe it was not realistic. Probably wasn't. No. At that point, you're thinking, we're going to win, right? Doesn't matter. Think of all the things that we've gotten through to get ourselves here. We'll find a way. We'll find a way. So that was the mindset going in, honestly.
Yeah. So you come into this season now, and you now have the repercussions of those injuries. Montour's out of your lineup. Ekblad's out of your lineup. Sam Bennett's not playing in at least the opening night game. We're recording this on a Thursday in Minnesota. How do you get by this? Because I remember talking to Paul Maurice at the Stanley Cup final after Game 6 there in Vegas, and he basically said that, look, next year it is not a given. We're just not going in as the Eastern Conference frontrunner. We are going to have major injuries, and we have to battle to make the playoffs again.
certainly. And as we break down where we are, I think we have a different probably viewpoint and perspective from which to gauge our own opinions of where we are. It's going to be hard. I mean, our division is stacked.
Right.
Everybody's improved. Two of our significant contributors on the back end are out for a couple months. It sounds cliche, and maybe it is, but we're going to do the same things that we did last year, right? Take it day by day. Focus on the positives. There's opportunity there too. On the back end, certainly there's a silver lining where maybe some guys can come out and get a chance. On the front end, now there's more responsibility. Maybe we have to play a little different. And all those things come together. I don't think any single factor is of unique importance other than, look, we've got two pretty good players out of lineup tonight. Sam's out of lineup tonight. Okay, well, we're pretty deep at center. So there's no reason. We're not going in thinking, oh my God, we can't win the game.
Right.
We're thinking, and we just have to keep going. We'll figure out a way.
Yeah.
And that was the mantra last year. And I do think that that's part of the mindset of our collective, of our team. And certainly one of the big things that happened last year, and I can't pinpoint a specific time, that trust between the room and the coaching staff, it's there.
Yeah.
And so it's so powerful. It'll be very, very interesting to see because it's real. And I think that the players truly believe in the coaching staff, and the coaching staff truly believes in the players.
Yeah. And is that why you brought in Paul? I mean, Paul, he's a communicator. When I know as media, we love talking to him. I got to think that was probably one of the things that really drew him.
He's a communicator on multiple levels. So intellectually, he understands the game, and it's impressive. But he has an ability to convey that message, and most important, to listen. So his delivery of the message to you may be distinct from the way he delivers it to me. Right. And that ability to have, I've said this before, this emotional intelligence, it's powerful. It's inspiring. It's helped me so much. He's taught me so much. He's a unique person. He did take hockey out of it. Just a significant reason why we were able to have some success last year.
You mentioned you're an agent. You were one of the same thing. I mean, when I was a young beat writer, you were one of the favorite people to call and talk to. It's funny. I just wrote a Modano story the other day, and what happened right after that, Modano didn't sign with Minnesota.
Yeah.
Who signed here that same day? John Madden. By Bill Zito.
Yeah.
What was it like sort of crossing over, learning in Columbus under Yarmo and that crew, and then getting this job in Florida? What was it like? The negotiate? So all of a sudden flipping sides where you're negotiating contracts, and I'm thinking of the Kachuk deal as well. All of a sudden your job is to try to keep that lower, where previously your job is to make it higher.
Yeah, I think the negotiation part it's almost now become easier than it was when we started. There was no cap.
Right.
And there weren't a lot of agents. There wasn't a lot of changing and switching between the players and the agency. Most of the guys would get an agent, and that's how it was. And I don't think you were really publicly judged on your performance. Now, this is going back to the 90s.
Right.
So you do the right deal for the player and move on. Now I think that there's an environment that's maybe more difficult. But we're spending to the cap.
Right.
I joke that, what I'd like to do is get the free agents in a room, explain to them what I think the ARB numbers are for the guys who are RFA, and say, you guys split it up. Let me know. We spend it all. So that it's almost harder to nuance the cap and try to keep everybody happy and keep everybody bought in.
Right.
And it's daunting, and it's going to continue to be daunting for us so long as we want to try to, to continue to be better and build the franchise the way it should be.
We saw 4 teams last night already have to play a man short because every team, it feels like, is right up against the cap. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams that have to do the same thing this year, play the man short to be able to go and make calls. I was talking to an AGM yesterday that basically said he just still can't believe that the league and the PA couldn't make some sort of deal to bump the cap up $1 million or $2 million. How hard is this for you guys all now managing a team? It's got to be hard for the players when you have, frankly, a bunch of guys in the minors right now that probably feel like we should be in the NHL.
We had to play short last season, and you get through it, right?
Yeah.
It's just like someone getting hurt in the game,
Right.
and you deal with it, and
And it
that's
really
the way
is
it
one
is.
game, right? That's the only punitive.
Well, it depends. If you didn't have anybody who fit the formula, which was 850,
Uh-huh.
right? So a lot of the players were not able to be recalled in that
Okay.
situation due to their cap hit was higher.
So it's 850 or less.
Correct.
Okay.
You get through it. That, everybody's subject to it.
Mhm.
Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I will tell you that in the course of the summer, in trying to get some free agents to come,
Mhm.
I said, I can't. I need that extra money. I don't want to be in that situation.
Right.
So 1 point. 1 point is the difference.
Yeah.
So you
Absolutely.
don't ever
You
want to
learned
give
it
up
last
that
year.
point.
Yeah.
And lots of cliches in our game, but that's real.
Yeah.
And so
You learned it. I remember I
Yeah.
covered one of the first Minnesota teams I covered missed the playoffs by a point,
Yeah.
and they were all going back like, that disallowed goal, that Roberto.
Exactly.
There's a Pascal Dupuis goal in Vancouver that went over the line that they found the video after the fact. Roberto is really sly, by the way, and keeping that puck out of the net. And the Wild still feel they should have made the playoffs then. Let's talk a little bit about the team here. Matthew Tkachuk. Keith is still banned, by the way. I did ask Matthew at the media tour if Keith is allowed to speak on behalf of him, and he is not. He is still banned from talking to the media after his little radio interview last year. But Matthew last year, to see him become the player that you expected him to be when you made that monster trade for Huberdeau and sign him to that deal. And not like, I think a lot of people are like, all right, he's going to a new place. Is he going to be the same stud that he was in Calgary? Then he comes here and he is just talking about a big game player.
Yeah, it's been beaten to death, right?
Right.
The story has been beaten to death. He was a very, very good player.
Yeah.
Who fit what we needed.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at, you have the physical ability, you have the skill set, you have the hockey playing ability.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get the most out of it? And then where does the personality, where does the leadership, where does that style of play fit? It was the perfect fit,
Mm-hmm.
right? We needed that gregarious. We needed a big personality.
Mm-hmm.
We needed guys who play hard, a little bit of an edge, who have some skill. Like, it just worked, and it worked for him too,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now he comes, he's in a place he likes, he's comfortable, and it's more of an essay on maybe what we're trying to get for every player
Mm-hmm.
is put you in celebrate what you do well, put you in a situation to succeed, and try to make sure that we do everything we can that we can control in a first-class, excellent manner.
Mm-hmm.
And off the ice, allow you to be a person.
Yeah.
And so for Matthew, they just kept checking boxes, right? His playoffs were extraordinary,
Yeah.
and that's him.
Yeah. And somebody that is absolutely a spokesman for the organization, a face for the organization, to see him going on TNT last year in the NBA Finals, and and in a market that I know extremely well, that you need to have that flash, you need to be out there in public, and he seems like the perfect personality.
You mentioned Walt, and how much of Matthew's poise is just a function of growing up as an NHL kid. And so you're right. He's the perfect guy. It doesn't affect him one way or the other. I don't think you could look at any of the things, the off ice asks
Mm-hmm.
of him, and say, oh, it affected his on ice. It's just, he is who he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's very good at it. He's sincere. He believes in it. And we've been very, very fortunate.
Yep. Wanted to ask you about Spencer Knight. How happy you're just to see him back now, his presence. And what is the plan? Obviously he's down in the minors right now. What is the plan right now with him?
Yeah. And the plan was, as soon as we got word a little earlier than you guys, yes, he's
Mhm.
coming back. He actually came to Florida early
Mm-hmm.
to train with the guys and be around. We have the luxury of having effectively two number ones.
Yeah.
And so if Bob's in the net, well, Spence doesn't need waivers this year.
Yep.
So why would you have him not playing? So now
Yep.
he can go play, and be ready and be part of things in the American League now, and just play hockey, play hockey. And the other stuff will sort itself out. And Stellar's been good for us too.
Yeah.
There's no, but we have a luxury because Spence doesn't need waivers. So
Yeah.
we're going to take advantage of it.
I know this isn't your pay grade, selling the tickets and all that stuff, but has the excitement, as far as carried over from the playoffs? Getting a bump at the gate. You have a naming rights now at the arena finally, which has got to be fun. But are you starting to see just excitement again in South Florida that you guys are starting up?
Yeah, I mean we talk about it pretty frequently because we joke about it a lot. And one of the positives is you come down, don't worry about the pressure of the media. Mm-hmm. The Athletic doesn't cover us.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know. Trust me.
So President's Trophy, Stanley Cup Finals. So tell Custance to get on it.
I know. Trust me.
But even Chucky's like, you know what? Yeah, no. It's getting more and more.
Yep.
I'm getting it. So for people that nobody knows who I didn't play. Nobody knows who I am. And I'm getting more and more. Hey, are you, at the Dolphins game the other day, I got a lot of more than one, multiple. So that tells me, yes, people are aware of who we are. They sold out the season tickets in Lower Bowl.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And when you come to the games, the fans who come, they're into it.
Yeah.
It's a great.
I remember my first couple of years in Minnesota, I would come down, cover a Panther game, and literally the PR department would say, "Hey, do you need a row for friends and family? We'll give you a row in the Lower Bowl and just hand me tickets."
And you know what? In fairness, isn't that the case with a lot of franchises and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yep.
In tandem with Matt Caldwell and those guys, we're trying to say, we're still trying.
Yep.
To build a franchise. And it's not easy. It's daunting. And it's probably the most difficult sports marketing environment maybe in the country.
Absolutely.
Because
so
many options.
Yep.
And then the weather, the sea, tennis, golf, take the dog for a walk, hang out in the backyard.
Yep.
So
I tell people that all the time. And I think that, everybody knows the soft spot I have for this organization. But I think that people don't realize that, the people that make fun of hockey down there last year or 2 years ago, find me a mark in this league that doesn't win a playoff round since 96 and until 2 years ago, and see if you're going to get a bunch of fans to come out. The fans are there. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I covered Pavel Bure there when that at that time National Car Rental Center was sold out every single night. The fans are there. You just got to give them a reason to show.
The fans are there. The appreciation of the game and the excitement is there, and we just have to be consistent in our approach to winning. We won't always win, right?
Yep.
And there's ebbs and flows, and my friend the CBA is making sure that it's daunting, but it's the same for everybody, right?
Absolutely.
But it's really fun.
Yep.
It's a great hockey, a truly great hockey environment.
Yep.
Take the other stuff out of it. The fans are great. They're passionate. Even in training camp, they're at our practices. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I'm with you. I think the Athletic should cover you guys. I remember when I worked at the Sun Sentinel, and after the lockout in 2005, I wound up moving here to Minnesota, but they said to me, we want you to go and cover something else. And you're not getting clicks and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, you realize that if we don't cover them, it's going to be that double-edged sword where, you're going to always say, well, the fans don't show up, so why should we cover them? But maybe they don't show up because you're not reading about the team, not seeing about the team. And I just think that, it is, I wish that the newspapers, I wish the Athletic were around you a lot more. So that's my opinion. No comment from you.
I'm not going to rip the Athletic, but we'll take shots at Custance.
Yeah. This might be my last podcast. Just last question for you. How was your summer? Obviously there was that sting of not obviously being able to hoist the cup. I know you had, I saw you walking around, you were a little banged up. It wasn't just your team, you were banged up. But did you do stuff to relax this off season to enjoy yourself?
Yeah. You're setting me up now. Actually, I had
I might know the answer.
I had knee surgery 2 days after Dr. John Uribe. There's his plug. I walked out.
I remember John Uribe from when I was down there. He was the Marlins guy, right?
I walked out, meniscus surgery, but I walked out of the hospital.
Wow.
Shouldn't have. No painkillers either.
Yeah.
I had some Advil that night, and that was it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's funny because it actually made us, well, we'll see. We think it made us a little bit better and a little bit more efficient because you don't have as much time.
Right.
So you have to, there's so many things you think, or at least me, I can only speak for myself in this job. you have these ideas of what needs to get done and how they need to get done, and the stages, the levels, the degree to which you complete them. And then you have time taken away from you and you're like, it just has to get done.
Right.
And so we became more efficient and understood as a management staff and really coaching staff as well, what's the most important. So we had to prioritize, we had to be more efficient, and it really helped.
Yep.
And
Well, hey, Bill, lots of luck this season. I'd love to see you guys get back to that final round. I think it would be awesome. Plus, I love covering the Stanley Cup
come
final
on
in South
down.
Florida. Exactly.
Thanks
And
for-
I could promise you the Athletic will be there for that. So.
You're banned.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, Bill, really appreciate it. I've been trying to pin you for this podcast for a while, and finally you had to fly to Minnesota to get it done.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'll send you the bill.
Yeah, that is Bill Zito. Back to you, Julian and Ian.
There we go. Great conversation. Bill Zito with Mike Russo. My favorite part is Bill Zito name checking Craig Custance in that interview with, hey, you better cover our team.
Yeah, even though Craig Custance no longer on the Tuesday show, still mentioned on the Tuesday show. Yeah, no,
Craig Custance is high up now, though.
Yeah, he's a big dog now. I mean, he was always a big dog, but like he's a big dog now. He's gone on to do bigger and better things. So I know it was tough for a lot of people to know that he was not going to be doing the Tuesday show anymore with Sean Gentile. It was a good show.
Well, he's not doing it because he's so high up the corporate ladder. We can't even see him from where we are.
Man,
that's how high up Custance is.
I had to like book an appointment to like talk to him on the phone over this. I'm half kidding, but like his schedule's very busy now.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was a great interview, and I loved him. I love Bill Zito talking about as well as like, we needed a big personality when they brought in Matthew Tkachuk. We needed a big personality, and he says, and it's good. Let's let everybody do what they do best within our umbrella. To paraphrase it. Anyway, great conversation, and you leave these types of conversations, and I always feel like, boy, how do you not pull for the Panthers now, right? And Bill Zito and the Panthers, you want to see them do well, don't you?
Yeah, I'll say this. I got to talk to Bill Zito for a story I wrote last year on the Tkachuk-Huberdeau trade. And the way that Bill was bigging up Matthew Tkachuk, he was talking about being in player meetings well before the trade even came together. And they obviously look at all the players around the league and they look at Matthew Tkachuk. And Bill's just like, man, like this is the guy. Like this is such an ideal player. Like if there was a way for him to be available, like you make that happen. And just, when the trade gets consummated, like I remember Bill saying like, it's Matthew Tkachuk. Like all roads go back to that player. This is like, it's one thing to have, Bill say, they need that personality, but Bill genuinely was enamored with this player for quite some time. And I have to say, I mean, I get it in Calgary. A lot of people are still kind of sad about the fact that it ended the way that it did. But Matthew Tkachuk is the biggest winner in all of this. The fact that he gets to play on a Florida team that expects to be competitive for the foreseeable future, gets to play in a warmer climate state, and we've seen him get a lot more. It feels like he's getting a lot more shine on his play. The People magazine feature that came during the playoffs, the appearance on the NBA on TNT panel. I wonder if those same opportunities come if he stays in the Canadian market, if he stays in Calgary. I don't think it does. And the personality that he has too, we need it in this game. So yes, we're going to debate about that trade for years to come. And you might be able to call the Panthers an early winner. It's really hard to judge trades off of 1 year. But I think it's very easy to say that Matthew Tkachuk is a big winner in all of this because of the exposure that he's got. He's a top 10 player. You could argue even top 5, maybe before the start of the season with Austin Matthews. But Matthew Tkachuk is a top 5 player, and he's shown that he can be that off of his first year in Florida.
Matthew Tkachuk returning to Calgary last year was one of the most anticipated returns. It was an emotional evening. Mm-hmm. Same when Johnny Gaudreau returned. We're going to get one of those on Tuesday night in Winnipeg. Pierre-Luc Dubois makes his return. Now, granted, he didn't spend as much time in that city as Tkachuk did in Calgary, but he certainly left an impression, and he certainly was a polarizing figure. And I thought our colleague Murat did a wonderful job. He tracked down Pierre-Luc Dubois, did a couple of interviews with him, gave him the opportunity to sort of share his insights into why he asked out of not only Winnipeg, but also Columbus. And if you read I don't know if you read the comment section on that story, it's wild. Like,
yes, it is.
People are blistering Dubois, they're blistering Murat. They're like, hey, I look at it as, Murat offered Pierre-Luc Dubois an opportunity to share his perspective and feelings. Now, if you don't agree with them, I get it, fine. But I read that article and I learned something. I learned a lot about Pierre-Luc Dubois' mindset, about why he, may have wanted out, and the impression that, Bobrovsky and those guys and Panarin left on him in Columbus, and, all those things. So I learned something. But the vitriol from the comment section, Julian, I think is going to bleed out inside the arena this evening. It's going to be, and we'll talk about this on Wednesday. We can do the full recap, but I'm thinking the temperature is going to be boiling over Tuesday night for Pierre-Luc Dubois.
I'm always going to be a fan of a player who takes agency of their own career and tries to put themselves in the best possible situation. It might not have been perfect, but and I can't think of any of those situations that are perfect for players that want to make it clear that they want to leave a particular city and go somewhere else. I know a lot of people were still up in arms about the shift that he had in Columbus. That was the part of the story that surprised me the most. That he had a shift to forget in Columbus, and he and John Tortorella are still on good terms. Like, I was stunned at that revelation. Like, I get, like, John Tortorella, very prickly personality wise, to say the least. And the fact that PL Dubois and him they're on talking terms. Like, I was stunned by that, but I don't blame him for wanting to seek other places to play, especially if you have other guys in that room in Columbus who are saying, you know what, man, like, we're leaving after this year, no matter what. If other guys are able to take advantage of that, why can't Pierre-Luc Dubois make that work for him? And look, I mean, I can also understand being a fan and being upset at a player not wanting to play in your market. You cheer on your team, you want your team to win, and you want guys who want to play on your team. And I think the Winnipeg Jets have a bunch of guys who want to play in that market. And they, I mean, look, we were talking with Kevin Cheveldayoff yesterday about Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck, who signed long-term deals to stay in Winnipeg. For a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois, if he doesn't want to stay there, he doesn't want to stay there. But I'll say this, I think the fans have every right to feel the way that they want to feel, but I also think Pierre-Luc Dubois is right in his conviction to want to go somewhere else.
Pierre-Luc Dubois told reporters on Tuesday morning in Winnipeg, he knows that the boos are coming, and that, hey, look, that when you say my last name, Dubois, it kind of sounds like boo. So he said, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and assume they're saying my name. That'll be I was saying Boo Earns.
I didn't realize Pierre-Luc Dubois had humor like that. Like, I didn't realize he was snarky like that. I didn't know that. That was also something that was revealing from that article too. Murat Atesh did a really great job on that story. He's been killing it lately, to be honest with you. I was telling him that this morning over Slack, but I'll make it known over the wire. He is killing it.
Yeah. So Dubois will certainly be a talking point over the next 24 hours. How that played out in Winnipeg Monday evening. We were so excited. We talked about this on the Monday pod. It's Bedard, it's Matthews. That matchup didn't quite take. Neither of them scored a goal, but Connor Bedard's dad took center stage, and it was like every time I feel bad for parents who go to watch their daughter or son perform as an athlete, and the cameras are on you. Of course, you're going to be throwing your head back, and you're going to be super nervous, and you're going to be putting your, biting your fingernails and all that stuff. But it was like that man went through every emotion on Monday's broadcast. It was like his acting, like if he was putting a demo reel together as an actor, he's like, here's my full range. Here's me excited. Here's me exasperated. Here's me angry. Here, every emotion, Bedard's dad hit it. It was pretty good.
I'll say this, like, I was having a conversation with a friend as all of that was going on, and they couldn't believe how Connor Bedard's dad was just acting the way that he was. And I can't help but wonder if any of us were parents to a generational talent or anyone who was good enough to play at the highest possible level for a sport, would we not act the same? Ian, you have kids.
Yes.
Like if one of your kids was playing, got drafted to the Dallas Cowboys or got drafted to some other NHL team, are you not in the arena losing your mind at the possibility that they might score a touchdown or score a goal or hit a home run? Like, we're all doing that. So I have a hard time getting on Connor Bedard's dad for acting the way that they were acting over their kid. Like, they're living the dream and they get to see it up close. Like, I'd be freaking out too. I hope we give them more grace.
Can I ask you a question along those lines for you and the listener? And I know you're too young, so you don't have kids. But I want to ask you this question because I'm fascinated by your answer, and I'm fascinated to hear from the listeners. Because I had a debate with one of my buddies years ago about this. Okay, so let's go back to you're a parent. Let's say your child, you are a diehard Montreal Canadiens fan. Okay, you've grown up. You are a huge fan of the Habs. Your son is a huge fan of the Habs. It's in your family for generations. Your son is drafted by the Boston Bruins.
I knew it was going to go there.
Okay. Who's the team that you cheer for now moving forward?
Man, I'd probably still cheer on. It's the worst example. I can't cheer for Boston.
But I'm asking you.
I can't cheer for Boston. I would.
That's
still
crazy
cheer for,
to me.
I would still cheer. I would cheer for my kid, and I would want my kid. But I'm not. You're not going to see me in the arena wearing a Bruins jersey.
But your kid plays for the team.
And this could work. And by the way, this could work for Edmonton, Calgary. Like if I was growing up a big Calgary Flames fan and my kid got drafted to the Oilers, I don't think I could bring myself to be an Oilers fan. I could be happy that my kid plays on that team.
That's crazy to me, man.
And I have like a jersey for myself, but I don't think I'd go so. What? I don't know if
my
I could
kid
do that.
Like, and you know this, I'm a diehard.
But what if
Dallas
like my kid change? Yes. But what if your kid changes teams?
Then that's my favorite team. And then when my child leaves the sport, then I go back to cheering for the team that I always did. But for the window of time in which my child is in the sport, that's my team. I'm pulling for them. I'm cheering for them. I'm following every game. I want them to win the cup.
I'm pulling. You could pull for your kid and you could follow their success. And if the team is doing well, you could be like, oh, that's nice. But I would stop myself short from being a fan of that team.
Oh,
like
I would be the biggest
fan.
Do that.
I don't know if I could do that, especially not for a rival team. If my
I'm
kid,
saying the biggest rival.
I couldn't do that for a rival. If my kid, if I grew up a Canadiens fan and my kid got drafted by the Seattle Kraken, yeah, I'll buy the Seattle Kraken merch. If he gets picked by Vegas, if he gets picked by Tampa,
but that's not the scenario I laid out. I said
I understand that, but to my point, it's a lot easier as opposed to being like, oh, I'm going to be a fan of an arch rival team. I can't do that. No, I can't do that. I can't do that. No.
Help us out.
I have no problem supporting my kid and give me all the paraphernalia. I'll have it in my basement and show it off to all my friends and be like, you see my son over there? Yeah, he plays for the Boston Bruins. That's fine. But like, be a fan of the team? No, absolutely not.
Okay. So here, one last thing before we wrap up this pod.
Sure.
Your child, we'll call them JMJR, Julian McKenzie Jr. JMJR. Julian McKenzie Jr. is playing for the Boston Bruins, your favorite team as a kid, and always had been, let's say, the Montreal Canadiens.
Right.
It's game 82 of the regular season. The winner of game 82 goes to the playoffs. Who are you cheering for?
Oh, that's tough because
okay, so that's my question.
Actually, you know what? I win regardless because
no.
I win.
Are you cheering for?
No, I win. I'm not cheering for anybody. I win because if my team makes it,
they're
in the playoffs. If my kid makes it, I'm getting playoff tickets. I win. You can't do that.
Okay, so you're gonna go down to the locker room after the game. Your child's team's lost 3-2, and you're like, hey, it was win-win for me. No,
I'm not good. Ian, I wouldn't do that in front of the players in the locker room. I might do that on the ride home, but I ain't gonna do that. What? Right? Imagine me go down to the locker room, do that. It's like, guys, you guys suck. Too bad you're not the other team. See you next year.
I'm telling you, I
That's a
think
good way to get your ass kicked in the,
I
in the
would
locker room,
be
by the
all
way.
over. I would give up my allegiance if my child made the NHL. That's my team, and it's not even a question. But it's really interesting to me. Like I'm fascinated by your answer, and I'm not saying you're. I'm just saying I think we have different, and I love that. I love the different perspectives. I just don't think I could cheer against my child.
I know in the NBA, I don't have a team I support anymore. I support players. So that's also, I mean, I get they're not my kids, but because of the fact that I am capable of being a fan of players, regardless of what team they play for, that has allowed me to be able to separate a player from a team and just acknowledge that, hey, they're just good. And it doesn't matter what team they play for. So why can't I do that with my own offspring? Why can't I do that with my own kid?
I'll tell you what.
Okay, he plays for the Boston Bruins. Like, fine, I don't have to like the team or the organization. And I realize that people listen to this. Like, I'm not trying to be a hater with the Boston Bruins. We could use another franchise as an example. But, like, I could just support my kid. And maybe if it was another team that wasn't an arch rival, I'd feel differently. But, like, just I don't know if I could bring myself to do that. Like, imagine so you mean to tell me that if your kid gets drafted by the Leafs, you're a Leafs fan?
Yeah, I would probably have a hard time putting the jersey on, but that is my team because that's where my kid plays.
So wait, time out. You would have a hard time putting on the jersey. You would support your kid, but you're not going all the way in and wearing a jersey? What's the point?
No,
then?
I would have to.
I don't know about that.
I would. Yeah.
Wearing a Leafs jersey? Yeah, good luck with that.
Well, if my kid played for the Leafs, I think it would be understandable.
You're pulling up to Scotiabank Arena and you're wearing that jersey, knowing that and knowing you're going to be on camera that Ian Mendes, his kid is playing in this game.
If my kid played for the Leafs,
royalty
I think people would understand.
For the Ottawa Senators, just cheering on his kid.
People would understand. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to ask our listeners here the next couple of days, tweet at us. Let us know where you stand on this. If your child was drafted to the arch rival team that you've cheered for your whole life, who's your team? And let's use the Game 82 as or a playoff meeting as the litmus test. That's
yes.
Okay. They're head to head. It matters who you're cheering for. And I'll tell you what we're going to do. Sean McIndoe, Down Goes Brown's going to jump on the Wednesday show with us tomorrow.
Yes.
Sean, diehard Leafs fan. He's got kids. We're going to ask him. His kid is drafted by Ottawa. Who's he cheering for? And he's going to have some smart ass answer.
I need to hear this.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Jesse Granger is also going to drop by on Wednesday. We'll talk some goaltending stuff with him. So we got McIndoe, Granger, all of that coming up on Wednesday. Hey man, this hour flew by. This was great.
I was about to say it was a really fun time. I mean, all these shows have been fun, man. So I'm happy about that, and I can't wait for DGB and Granger tomorrow.
Yeah, love it. So thanks for listening to the Tuesday pod. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a rating and review. We'd appreciate that. You can follow us as well on YouTube, youtube.com/@theathletichockey-show. A lot of great content. A lot of these debates that we have, they're going to put them up. You're going to see Julian and I in matching attire. You're not going to want to miss that. So enjoy the games. I know it's a busy night. You know what I love about the Tuesday night schedule, Julian? There's a game that's Monday was 5 games. They all started at 7, which was like boo. Tuesday, there's a game at 6, a couple games at 7, a couple games at 7:30, game at 8, game at 9:30, game at 10. Like it's staggered. So
why
we got
is it so hard for the NHL to understand that we want more of that?
Exactly. Stagger them. Stagger the games. Enjoy the night. Enjoy the games. And Julie and I will hit you up again on Wednesday.
Pete.